Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Transformers comic review. Putting this one out earlier than maybe you would expect, mainly because I'm going to be changing up the way I do these Transformers comic reviews, which I'll talk about after I finish this review. For this review, I'll be reviewing the second part of the big IDW Transformers crossover event, Dark Cybertron. So I'll be reviewing issues 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, the basically ending of Dark Cybertron, and that basically brings us perfectly up to where we are pretty much right now in terms of comic releases coming out right now. Season 2 of both Robots in Disguise and More Than Meets the Eye, as well as Windblade, which I'll talk about at the end. But, as I said, part 2 of Dark Cybertron, I've already reviewed part 1, gonna review the second part now. Now, first of all, let's go through these issues. So, I've obviously, as I said, done 1 through 6. Issue 7, we've got for this time. Issue 8. Issue 9. Issue 10. Kind of spoilery cover of issue 11. And finally, Dark Cybertron Chapter 12, the finale part. Now, in this case, we have, obviously, I think it's, 3 Robots in Disguise issues, 2 More Than Meets the Eye issues, and then Chapter 12 is just basically the second standalone Dark Cybertron book. Now, let's talk generally about this conclusion to the event. With part 1, the big conclusion I came to was that slow opening, beginning to get better, but overall, some interesting stuff going on, though maybe not quite worth taking so many issues off of just a standard issue of More Than Meets the Eye or Robots in Disguise. It instantly picks up with Chapter 7 and continues to be really kind of fast-paced, and actually really makes it worth the crossover happening throughout the whole second part, because a lot of it is just slow build up in the first 6 parts. This time around, you really get to see some of the groups that have been apart for a while interacting more, and some big events happening, and it is a really good conclusion, I think, is the main thing to say. Just that it does end very well and sets up the season 2 of the ongoings really well. So, let me just talk about each of these issues kind of. I'm going to try not to spoil everything, but to talk about this I do have to spoil some things. So the aim of these is obviously not that you listen to these before buying the comics. It kind of is more that you have read them and want to hear my thoughts on them. So I am going to talk about stuff that happens in them. Straight away with Chapter 7, you get some really big kind of reveals. The ending page is obviously the reveal that there are more female Cybertronians out there, and that's a pretty big thing. Obviously, we only get to meet Chromia and Nautica here, which are interesting, but then in issue 8 I think we meet Windblade for the first time, and she's obviously the big fan-made character. We had multiple polls from Hasbro where the fans voted on fan sites and were allowed to make this character. They put her into the comics, and this is basically what came of that. She's also getting a toy coming out later. But just the whole appearance of these female Autobots, they're basically looking after Metroplex. They're keeping him alive after he's been missing for months, and I think Robots in Disguise and stuff like that is going to be exploring a bit more about where Metroplex was all of this time. And it's just interesting by itself because IDW has set up already that RC is the only female Cybertronian because Jaxus performed an experiment on her that made her female, basically, and that's why you don't have other female Autobots or Decepticons or anything like that, female Cybertronians. So this is a big thing because it obviously presents the whole idea of that they're going to need to explain this at some point down the line, and I think it just comes down to, it'll work out kind of better for them, I think, having the female Autobots, because it gives you more chance to have better characters. Things will kind of just just be more open, but they do need to explain it because it was a pretty big kind of plot point for RC that she was the only female Autobot for so long. I think the Windblade series is going to explore that, and they make a few jokes about it here, just like, you're called she? It's like, that's interesting. And then you get the kind of little, they meet RC, and you see that, like, yep, let's do like she's doing, and join the fight and stuff like that. So there's some nice moments, and you can see hints about what's going to come, but no full explanation about what they're about in Dark Cybertron. But it was nice that they actually introduced these characters here before just getting into the Windblade miniseries with all of these characters running around. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of my thoughts on that. They don't focus too much on the whole idea of what's the whole issue of there's more female Autobots here. They don't focus too heavily on it. You also get some nice character development for Rodimus here. He shows this thing on his hand where he has, I think, 89 over 101, and he uses that to snap Nightbeat out of his kind of mind control. And the reveal is that the reason he has these numbers on his hands is because together they add up to 190, which is the number of crew members on the Lost Light. 101 voted to keep him as captain, 89 voted against, and he's kind of pledged that from here on out he's going to do everything he can to get the other 89 back on board with him, and leads to some nice kind of interactions between him and Optimus, because obviously Optimus left when people kind of began to vote against him, in one way of saying it, and he kind of thinks Rodimus should have done the same when there's so many people against him. But Rodimus obviously has stayed on board. You also see more of, in this issue, of Megatron and Bumblebee's friendship beginning to form, which is actually something that's really interesting throughout the final 6 parts of Dark Cybertron, and especially for Megatron's character going into More Than Meets the Eye Season 2. As you can probably tell from the cover of issue 8, this is the issue where Metroplex returns, and as I said, the fembots were on board Metroplex. The Windblade specifically is helping to keep Metroplex alive. He arrives back, and there's obviously been set up in More Than Meets the Eye that Metroplex is missing his thumb. We see that his kind of spark is misplaced. It's being held in his shoulder because Metroplex is overrun with Ammonites who we've met before. And you see, as just these things that I'm saying, you can start to see all the little bits of continuity set up before coming together, and just at this stage a lot of stuff is starting to happen. The Lost Light crew members are finding the Ammonites in Metroplex. Crazy stuff is starting to happen. The Dead Universe. Cup is back working again. We meet Windblade for the first time in this issue, and find out about she's the one who can talk to Metroplex. Just kind of skimming through this so I can remember everything that happens, and yeah, you end issue 8 with Metroplex and the Necrotitan about to kind of square off. I believe the whole thing about the reason what recharges Metroplex is that they give him his thumb back, basically, which has one of the ores in it, which combines with one of the other ores, and basically means you have a kind of battle of 2 titans charged with ores going on, which is pretty nice. Issue 9, again, cover tells a lot about what's going on here. Effectively what happens is that Nova Prime is in the Dead Universe, and he basically transforms himself, because he can control the Dead Universe, into a copy of Optimus Prime and begins to taunt Optimus. Obviously Optimus at this point is still going by Orion Pax, and you basically get some really cool kind of character development there as through this fight Optimus basically kind of gets over the whole kind of thing of, and the reason he left because the lineage of the Primes was tainted so much by what came before, and he felt that basically he represented that still, and he was the war effectively, and he's kind of gotten past that now, and the key thing here is that he returns and accepts himself as Optimus Prime once again, and doesn't demand that everyone call him Orion Pax. And it's much of this is thanks to Rodimus giving him a pep talk talk, which is important given what, as I said, happened in issue 7, where Optimus was kind of like blunt with Rodimus about, you shouldn't be captain now, you should have resigned, kind of like I did. And all of this is kind of happening while, you know, Metroplex wins, obviously, and it appears as if everything's kind of coming to a conclusion. The fight seems to be over. You see little scenes of Shockwave, you know, he's not too disappointed that the Necro Titan has been defeated. And, you know, this is where, you know, we see some of, like, Shockwave turning on Galvatron and stuff like that. And then, like, Chapter 10, when you look at the cover, you're like, that is a classic More Than Meets the Eye cover. You have, like, characters talking at a bar. That's really interesting. But the key thing here is you have a mix of characters like Whirl and RC talking to each other. We haven't seen that in ages. Swerve and Blur has obviously been a kind of thing that's been set up. And then, you know, Swoop and Brainstorm over the briefcase here is interesting too. But some of the key points in this are, you know, you have Chrome Dome and Prowl meeting for the first time since, effectively, you know, in continuity would have happened like before More Than Meets the Eye issue 1, and the whole thing of what Chrome Dome did to Prowl, you know, getting rid of his memories of a certain thing that he remembers about Chrome Dome, and that leaving a pathway there for Brainstorm to get inside Prowl's mind, leading to everything that happened in the early stages of Robots in Disguise. You have those two kind of come to blows a bit over that, and Prowl kind of taunts Chrome Dome a bit over the death of Rewind, and rightfully so, he gets chucked off the ledge. Which, let me just show you that panel. It's pretty good. You know, it's never nice to lose something or someone, and then Chrome Dome just throws him over the edge. And some of the stuff I like is that you see here, they're fighting over a kind of personal issue, but Prowl has the Constructicons because he's part of Devastator now, and they basically are completely on his side. They consider him their leader, and they want him to do all of this stuff, and it's a really nice dynamic that you have going on. And then key reveal at the end of this issue is that Shockwave has an army of Ammonites, and I think at some point in this book, I can't remember completely because I didn't like go through this kind of with a fine-tooth comb. I think it's established that the reason the Ammonites are so like even better Transformers than the actual Transformers, Cybertronians, is because the ore change is on their planet, I think, or something like that. Either way, interesting. Now, Chapter 11, this is one a lot of people were waiting for a long time, because solicitations basically showed us this cover. The description said something similar: death of a hero, an Autobot is going to die in this issue, and people were really eager to see what happened. And what happens is really interesting, because you didn't expect this to, you know, be allowed to happen, and especially given what we've seen from this character before, just didn't expect it to happen, even though it arguably made the most logical sense, and ultimately it works really well to move other characters along. But enough talking around what actually happens. The character who dies is Bumblebee, which is kind of shocking in a way, because as you can see here, he obviously gets a new body just like a few issues prior to Dark Cybertron, and then he's killed by like a powered up Shockwave, kind of empowered by all of the ores coursing through him. And you see the kind of impact that this has on Megatron, where he gets really emotional about the death of Bumblebee, because they've kind of, through having to work together to deal with this crisis, he's kind of seen how good Bumblebee is, and kind of realizes the kind of issues that he's had. They even bond, I think, and not bond, have a nice scene earlier on in one of the issues where they basically, Bumblebee talks to Megatron about how he felt at the kind of like loss of one big battle, and Megatron realizes that his cause, while he had some things correct, wasn't fully right at all. Didn't word that the best at all, but some really nice character stuff going on. As I said, I don't want to go through every single part of this because so much does happen, which is a huge contrast to, say, my review of part 1, where I barely... Stuff happened in the first 6 parts, but as I was saying, you'd have like a whole issue go by, and one of the group of characters, because they hadn't met up yet, was doing this tiny thing advancing the story, and then you move on to part 2 and finally see that thing actually happen. And so you'd only get 1 or 2 maybe things happening in each of these issues. Well, with the second half, all of these I've just talked about, really big things happening, you know. Great Rodimus character development early on. You know, Bumblebee dies in this issue. You see a big change in Megatron. Metroplex returns in 1 issue. The Fembots are revealed in 1 issue. Windblade comes in another issue. Ammonites attack in another, and so on. All of this stuff happening, all leading up to Chapter 12, the finale of Dark Cybertron. And it's a pretty good finale, considering especially how Chaos, I suppose, came to an end. Yes, ended okay, but really wasn't that good overall. And what you get here, I suppose, is them completely taking out the Dead Universe as this kind of source of anything in the Transformers universe, these comics. Because that's one thing that you could say about this event, in that while overall it's very, very good, it did show that why has the Dead Universe become this thing as like the only place they can ever go to when they have an event to do? Because it's been like 3 times in a row where they've went straight for Dead Universe in terms of events, and this basically takes the Dead Universe out of the picture. And what happens here is that everyone completely comes together. You have Decepticons, Nails, Autobots, and the female Autobots all fighting the Ammonites as Megatron and Optimus confront Shockwave 2-on-1. And you have big moments happen, like Megatron have a really big moment where he puts Bumblebee's Autobot symbol on himself and accepts that, you know, I've learned a lot from him, I'm going to continue that going forward and become an Autobot. And you see these two work together to basically, they don't defeat Shockwave in the way that you'd think an event like this would end, where, you know, it's a big fight and they just barely manage to win because they're the leaders of both factions coming together as one. What actually happens is that they use what's happened to Shockwave in his past, and that great continuity as has been set up in Shadowplay, I believe, and little bits before that and after that. The fact that Shockwave is the way he is because he went through the Impurata and Shadowplay process. That's why he has the one eye. That's why he has one arm, one hand is a gun, and so on. That's why he's completely logical and doesn't really feel emotions and stuff like that. And because of all of the ores that he put himself kind of through, he basically became, I suppose, godlike is the best way to say it, and could remember everything, see everything, manipulate everything. And so those memories basically came back to him, and he realized who he was. And Megatron and Optimus used that to their advantage here, and kind of just show him, like, look at what you've become. And he even kind of realizes that in a kind of nice moment where I think he talks about how when he was a senator, one of his proudest accomplishments was fixing his favorite bench. And now as Shockwave, look at the big thing he's going to do, take over the whole universe, like destroy everything except Cybertron. You kind of see, and then he kind of sees that, and he lets Megatron and Optimus basically defeat him. He just doesn't fight back, lets them take him out, and it's a really moving scene, and just kind of a perfect way to kind of end this. It doesn't have to be a massive fight. It's more about the character moments and what this means for all the characters and what happens. It's really cool. But I suppose I should talk about Shockwave's plan, because I haven't really mentioned it at all. Basically, his idea was that using the power of all 13 ores combined together within himself, he was going to create basically this kind of singularity point that would basically fuel Cybertron for all time at the expense of basically everywhere else in the universe. So eternal fuel for Cybertron at the expense of every planet, every other species in the galaxy, and so on. So pretty crazy plan, and kind of fits him perfectly because he initially kind of seeded all of those planets with ores with the goal of creating an everlasting source of energy for the planet, and you sort of see kind of the evil tainting of that kind of good goal over a course of time coming together. And you know, if there's one thing maybe that was a bit disappointing about the ending, I suppose, is that it just doesn't have a like super satisfying ending. Like, a lot is left at the end of this book for the issues after this, Dawn of the Autobots, the start of season 2 of Robots in Disguise, More Than Meets the Eye, and Windblade, to resolve a lot of this stuff. While I felt they could have actually resolved some of it towards the end of this, but you know, it is a nice kind of moment where you end it with Optimus as Optimus Prime, not Orion Pax anymore, and Autobot Megatron walking out after defeating Shockwave. They've saved the universe together with the help of Metal Hawk and so on. They walk out to basically the combined groups of, Autobots, Nails, and so on, everyone, and just that shocking moment. Not to mention this page as well. Galvatron effectively takes control of the Decepticons after Megatron has obviously become an Autobot now. So there, I've talked about all of the issues and the complete ending, and I come back to the question I asked at the start of my first review of Dark Cybertron, the first part. Was it worth getting this 12-issue event at the expense of basically 5-6 months of More Than Meets the Eye and Robots in Disguise individual issues? And I think overall, just about. Because of how it ended, in that the second half was actually just outright good on its own and made for very good issues. The disappointing bits are just the first half was very slow. A lot of it was helped, I think, by the fact that they did spread this event over 2 ongoing issues. So, you know, the way it worked out month to month when these issues were coming out was that when it first started, you got Dark Cybertron 1, More Than Meets the Eye, the first Dark Cybertron More Than Meets the Eye issue, and Robots in Disguise. So you got 3 parts of the book in 1 month. Then you were getting 2 every week until the final 3, when you got 3 again with Robots in Disguise, More Than Meets the Eye, and Dark Cybertron issue 12. So it meant that instead of this event possibly taking place over the course of, say, 12 individual issues and taking a whole year to do, we basically got it done in 5 months. And I think that really helped it, in that you were getting multiple parts of this event every month, and it really helped it to, you know, stop it just being the super slow issue, especially at the start. You actually got a lot of that out of the way. A lot of the slow parts were done within the first 2 months, and we were allowed to just enjoy it, and it really helped. And I think now that they're all out, obviously the first trade is out, the second trade is coming out in a few months, I think this will read really well across those 2 trades, and a lot better than just, as it was here, just issue to issue, month to month. But it's good, and I think where it's set up, the ongoings, More Than Meets the Eye, Robots in Disguise, and now Windblade, worked really well, and that's a huge positive to put on Dark Cybertron, that Autobot Megatron, Optimus Prime coming back, you know, the reaction to Bumblebee being dead, more female Autobots, introduces a lot of stuff that can be dealt with in season 2s of the ongoings, while they also deal with stuff that have been set up in them before this event even started. So that's really cool. Add to that it combined a lot of really big continuity. Like, Shockwave's whole story here effectively was set up since his first introduction into the IDW universe with Spotlight Shockwave, and it resolved all of that together. Basically, it combined everything that he's done in the universe up to now with us finding out about his past and who he was before becoming Shockwave, Senator Shockwave, in Shadow Play, and even I think Monstrosity discusses him a little bit. Just very good continuity, and you can really see how John Barber and James Roberts working together. It really shows how good of a writing team we have on Transformers right now, and that was really, really good. So that's really all I have to say. I do recommend reading Dark Cybertron. As I said at the end of my part 1 video, this may be an event. It may be a little bit annoying to you that we got away from just James Roberts on More Than Me, just John Barber on Robots in Disguise, to kind of have to do this big event that had toy sales, Hasbro behind it in some ways. But it is actually very good and definitely worth reading, even if you weren't too happy about this event maybe taking over your favorite books for a few months. But yeah, that's all I have to say. That's my review of Dark Cybertron. Now, what I was saying at the start, I'm going to be doing these Transformer comic reviews differently from here on out, just because this is a good time to start. Up to now I've been reviewing these trade by trade basically, and even with Dark Cybertron, it's 6 issues to a trade. From now on out, I'm going to be doing issue by issue, just week to week, just because I do really like talking about this, and just waiting to actually talk about Dark Cybertron until the first trade came out was a very long wait, and I do really want to talk about it week to week. So perfect jumping on point is the launch of season 2 of everything. Dawn of the Autobots is what they're calling it. Robots in Disguise, Windblade, and More Than Meets the Eye all basically getting a new fresh coat of paint, starting different stories while still continuing on what's come before in the aftermath of Dark Cybertron. That's what I'm going to be doing. So hopefully sometime over the weekend I'm going to get up a review for Windblade issue 1, which is the new series. It's right now this is confirmed to be, I think, a 4-issue miniseries, and if it sells well they'll probably turn it into a 3rd ongoing set on Cybertron, which is going to be really cool. Robots in Disguise issue 28 starts basically this story of Optimus leading a team of Autobots back to Earth and the events that go on there. So that's why Windblade is pretty interesting, because Robots in Disguise is actually moving away from Cybertron, and so with More Than Meets the Eye also doing that, we don't actually have a story set on Cybertron after having Robots in Disguise do that for so long. More Than Meets the Eye issue 28 comes out on Wednesday. I'll be picking it up then. But what that's going to be about is that I think Megatron takes control. He becomes captain of the Lost Light and is commanding them on their mission, and that's going to be really cool to see what happens. Some new crew members. I think some people are going to leave the Lost Light, some people are going to come on board. We're going to have different people in Cybertron, different people with Optimus. It's going to be a nice shake-up while, obviously the same writers on board. We've got John Barber for Robots in Disguise, James Roberts for More Than Meets the Eye, and then the Windblade team is Margaret Scott and Sarah Stone, which is actually really cool. But as I said, I'm going to try and get this one out over the weekend. If I can, I'll actually try and get Robots in Disguise out over the weekend too, but for sure I'll try and get More Than Meets the Eye, the first 3 of these kind of season 2 starters, out before the end of next week. So thanks for watching this video, and bye.